This episode is brought to you by Pine Melon. Pine Melon is the farmer's market delivered right to your doorstep. But this isn't just any grocery delivery service. Pine Melon connects with local farmers, ranchers, and producers, meaning you're supporting local agriculture with every order. Save time and skip a grocery trip by ordering online now at pinemelon.com. Plus, if you use code CityCastDenver, you get $75 off your first delivery. Again, use code CityCastDenver to save $75 on your first grocery order at pinemelon.com.
Today on CityCast Denver, is Trump coming or what? He keeps saying he's going to come to Aurora and, I guess, challenge the Venezuelan gang leader to a round of golf. I have no idea, but we've got a really great guest on with us today to talk about the conservatives' new obsession with Aurora, expired plates, there's a new crackdown happening, the Nuggets and Avs streaming news, and all the other big stories of the week. Today is Friday, September 27th. I'm Paul Caroli, and here's what Denver's talking about. Welcome back to CityCast Denver, the show about the city that finally has a reasonably priced way to watch the Nuggets and the Avs. Bree, we have to talk about it.
I mean, good for everybody else. I got my cable guy in Florida that hooks me up.
You're not leaving him behind with the news? We've all been waiting for it. We've been dying for it.
My friend Shayna's cousin? No, I'm not.
No, I don't blame you.
But I agree. I mean, I think it's great because we've talked about this at length, but like you can't build a fan base with people if they can't watch your games. And it was funny. We were in line at the airport the other day, and this family, Montgomery was talking about the Rockies, and the family in front of us was from Denver, and they're like, yeah, but we're Red Sox fans. And I was like, whoa. And then I realized, like, this is a lot of people, based, like, they bring their sport with them, and we don't give them any reason to watch ours because you can't. So now. And
it's such a transplant city anyway.
Right. Like, we want people to get excited about our sports teams. So maybe this is the entry point.
So I'll just to say what I'm talking about. Kroenke Sports and Entertainment, the company that owns the Nuggets and the Avalanche, after years of negotiations, dispute, basically a deadlock standstill with Comcast, the biggest cable provider in the region, they've made a deal with 9 News to broadcast some games for free on TV, and they are also launching an app called Altitude Plus, which will be offering all non-nationally broadcast games for $20 a month.
So you can still watch TNT like I do to see the guys talk afterward, but that's great. It's like kind of no duh. How did they not think about this? Like, why not circumvent the cable system that not a lot of people watch anyway and get your own app? So.
Yeah, I wonder. I mean, I predict that they'll be making less money with this than they used to make with the regional sports networks, the Comcasts of the world.
But that might be the new reality.
But that money wasn't on the table this time. That's why there was no deal. They couldn't make it work.
So
anyway, I know our guest wants to talk about this as well. I'd love to hear from him. So we'll let me get through some business here. It's Friday. We're in the 5280 Magazine studios. Bree's back. Welcome back, Bree.
Thanks. I'm back.
Hey, the election's coming up, and we're doing some really exciting stuff.
We are.
To talk about it and help you all make your decision about what to vote for.
Because I don't know if, I'm sure you all have. Paul and I got our blue books in the mail, and they're like the size of the Bible.
Friggin' brick.
And you're going to need some help parsing through that, and we want to provide that for you.
Yeah, so we're going to be talking about it all for weeks on the show in all different ways. If you have ideas or requests, please let us know. We'd love to help with specific questions. But we're doing 2 events. So this is a save the date for October 7th. We're going to be moderating forum for the candidates for RTD's board race for District A, which is the downtown district. And maybe that sounds boring, but let me tell you, this is the most dramatic, most exciting, most important RTD board election maybe ever. I think
we'll do some shows leading up to it to give you more of why this matters, but we know that you all care about transit, so I think this is going to be huge. Yeah. I'm really excited.
I mean, the candidates are interesting. They've got interesting ideas. It's going to be really fun. That's going to be at the Buell Public Media Center on October 7th. There's going to be a link to register in the show notes. We're ready for you all to RSVP. And then, Bree, October 17th.
October 17th. I'm calling it Ballots and Beverages because we're doing it at Town Hall Collaborative, and they have a bar and coffee. So you can come and hang out with us and some special guests. And we're going to talk about a couple issues that are on the ballot, kind of dig into some of these things that are tougher to understand, because we know there's a lot for you to parse through on this ballot, and we want to make it as accessible as possible. So we're teaming up with Town Hall Collaborative to do this live show and dig into the ballot.
We're going to have experts. It's going to be us. It's going to be Hang. Help you figure out your votes.
So it's October 17th. We'll have more information to come and an RSVP link in the next week or so. So stay tuned.
Okay. Let me get to our guest.
Finally.
So excited to have him here today. He's a former speechwriter for Bernie Sanders, an Academy Award nominee, the founder of the independent investigative journalism site The Lever, host of The Lever's great new podcast, Master Plan, that we'll be talking about in a little bit. Welcome back to the show, David Sirota.
Thank you. Thanks for having me.
David, Altitude Plus, are you signing up day one?
I am signing up day one.
Wow.
I tried to put off getting ripped off by Fubo last season. I put it all the way off until I think it was mid-January, and then I needed my nuggets. And now this is like what, $60 a month cheaper than Fubo. So
that was so crazy. $80 a month.
Ridiculous. Look, I was an early cord cutter, like 15 years ago. I was like, I'm done with paying for TV. I'm out. I'm done. That paying for Fubo, I was like, this feels bad. But I made it to January. So I give myself a pat on the back. I made it till January, and then I succumbed to getting ripped off.
Did you ever, because I did the same thing, and I got Fubo for a little bit last year, same experience. It felt so bad. Did you ever watch any of the other channels, or was it just a Nuggets subscription for you?
Honestly, it was just a Nuggets subscription.
Yeah, same.
I never watched anything else on Fubo.
Yeah, I don't even know what else it had.
Well, I will say, it does have like all sorts of weird sports that are kind of cool, so I will admit to jumping, like at one point the pickleball tournament was on. There was a badminton tournament on. It was actually pretty cool, but like not worth.
It's not enough. It's like during the Olympics, you'll watch stuff you never watch, but that's like an event during a couple years. I should cop to.
I was annoyed that there's stuff on Fubo that I deliberately cut the cord to avoid ever seeing, like cable TV news of people screaming at each other.
Oh yeah.
I was like, this is literally what I don't want. I don't want.
And I'm paying for it. Whether I want to or not. But now you don't have to.
Now I don't have to.
So there's one other part of this that I want to talk about, because this whole like direct-to-consumer strategy for sports teams has kind of been bubbling up a little bit lately. Yeah. This is not our main topic. We're not going to go that deep. But I wanted to just point out that in the NHL, there's some other teams that have already done this, like Seattle, Dallas, Vegas. They have services like this. Utah has one. Utah has an NHL team as of this year. And there's a service that they've launched for their NHL team to be named, still to be named. And the Jazz, they get something extra. If you have a season ticket with either of those teams, you get a free year of their streaming service. I haven't seen that with Altitude Plus.
That's pretty cool.
That is cool.
I don't think Altitude's going to need to do it. I think people are just going to be like, oh, finally, an option. I'll just pay.
How long has it been, by the way?
4
years and years and years.
Yeah, I was like, I feel like it's been like almost half a decade.
It's been, you can just hear Mr. Kroenke, he's probably just like sighing over there, like making this concession to people.
Just crying into his $100 bills, wiping his nose.
I mean, it is true. You really can't build a real large fan base
if people can't watch sports.
Right.
And we have a team that went to the championship, so it's more expensive to go to games now.
The way I justified the Fubo and the way I will justify Altitude Plus now, because again, I don't like spending money on any television at all, is that I started going to Esther's in Southeast Denver, every time there was a game that wasn't on TV. And then it was like, wait a minute, I'm spending more money. I mean, I was going to say, local, disrespect to
putting
Esther's,
money into the local economy. I love that restaurant too.
I know, but like at a certain point, I was like, I just want to watch I don't want to have to go out to eat like every time.
Especially if they make it to the playoffs, we're going to be watching a lot of games.
Exactly.
So
next time
they better make it to the playoffs.
I know.
I'm sure
feeling the same way.
I'm sure they will.
They're doing great.
I'm a little nervous.
Really?
Yeah.
I'm excited
to
see what this.
Look good at the Olympics.
It's a whole topic for other discussion, but I'm
I'm
hopeful, but I'm not. I'm cautious. I'm like, it's not cautiously optimistic. It's like worriedly pessimistic.
I feel like Aaron Gordon's like really hitting his stride, and he's a Denver guy now.
Fingers crossed.
We'll talk about it more when the season starts in a couple of weeks. We'll talk about it more. True. But we got a great topic today. Our top story this week has been brewing ever since the Trump-Harris presidential debate, which I think was a couple weeks ago now.
September 10th, I think.
September. Wow.
Over 2 weeks ago.
So ever since then, that's when Trump first started talking about this whole like hysteria over the Venezuelan gang, quote unquote, takeover in Aurora. But he continues to talk about it. He continues to say he's going to come to Aurora to do something. No plans have been made public yet. So the topic today is he coming or what? What does it mean if he does? And what is Aurora doing right now? So I want to start with a clip of his most recent statement, and then David, I want to hear what you think about this.
You know, the governor is a Democrat. And he's a radical left Democrat, and he's not too popular right now because they're going to take over a lot more than Aurora. They're going to go through Colorado, take over the whole damn state by the time they finish. Unless I become president, they won't last long.
A radical Democrat?
He's talking about our governor, Jared Polis.
Okay, can we just first of all talk about one thing many things. There's a lot of misinformation about what's going on in Aurora, and I'm sure we'll discuss that in a second. But let's just talk the pure politics of this. Aurora is a Republican-run city.
Yeah.
They made a big deal over the Republicans taking it over. There are barely any Democrats left in that city government. So just the MAGA movement ripping on Aurora.
It's wild.
It's like, yo, it's your city.
It's like them ripping on Colorado Springs. Like, where do you think you are? It's
like the governor. Like, what is he? Look, what about the city that this is allegedly? I'm going to underscore allegedly that this is all allegedly happening in. Like, they made a big deal of like MAGA taking it over.
Yeah.
So
it's goldfish brain though. They don't remember. I don't know. To me,
but it's not even like a remember. It's like what the government of Aurora literally is right now, today.
Yeah,
like, it's really weird.
It is very weird.
Mm-hmm. Well, Kaufman is saying he would love for Trump to visit. He says he now wants, after weeks of, he was so back and forth on this whole Venezuelan gang thing. He was like, it's a huge problem. Then he was like, we made the arrests, and he was like, it's overblown. And anyway, but he said he would love to see Trump visit because he wants the opportunity to set the record straight and show the candidate that, quote, this is in the Colorado Sun, we've dealt with the situation from a law enforcement perspective. So he doesn't want to talk politics anymore, it sounds like.
I mean, the thing is that my takeaway from all of this is, first and foremost, there is a serious housing crisis in
100%
Aurora.
Agree.
I mean, at the root of this is an out-of-state property owner with properties in disrepair. Properties in disrepair tend to create all sorts of problems, right?
Also, they're making money off of people living in squalor because these are the folks that will rent these places because they need housing so badly.
It's the exact same situation with the Haitian immigrants in Ohio. I made this point on the show 2 weeks ago, but both of these political hysterical narratives the conservatives are rolling out, they're both boiled down to the housing crisis in this country.
Also, the police department continues to say that while they can't say that there's not one single person affiliated with a gang somewhere in Aurora, the police department continues to consistently say this is not a gang problem, not a Venezuelan gang problem. I don't think the police department has any motive to lie about that, right? I mean, the police departments can lie and do lie. But about that specific fact, is this or is this not a Venezuelan gang problem? What would the motive be for the police department to lie about that? If somebody has evidence that contradicts that, that would be great to see. But why are we sort of brushing aside that the police continue to say that this is not fundamentally a Venezuelan gang problem?
I love this quote from Trump said, in Aurora, entire apartment complexes are being taken over by armed Venezuelan gangs with weapons the likes of which even the military doesn't see. Sir, have you seen the military?
Is he for gun control?
Yeah, this is like one of those things where, like, if you actually listen to what he says, it's like, what does he actually think about this stuff? Like, what does he actually care about?
These are vicious, violent people. I mean, it's like, it's just it's just racism. It's just old school
pure
racism.
That's all it is. Now,
fear.
I will also say, look, I read a stat that it was 40,000 people in the 6th congressional district have moved in the last year. Many of them immigrants. And look, that's a huge influx of new people,
no doubt,
for a city. And it's going to sort of stress city services. It's going to stress the housing situation. I mean, how to deal with that? You can do what Trump is doing and just be just a straight up racist about it, or you can actually try to deal with the influx of people. And I feel like what this all represents to me is an inability to have a mature conversation about, population migration. It's just straight up lowest common denominator racism for electoral purposes. I don't think it'll work, but then again, like I'm an eternal optimist, and it's a pretty dark period of time right now. Like I could imagine it working, not for Colorado, not electorally in Colorado. This is not about we're like a stage for this, right? Like for the rest of the country.
Mm-hmm. Let's talk about what's happening in Aurora. How are they going to respond? Because Aurora has declared itself a, quote, non-sanctuary city. Like you said, they are run by a Republican, Mike Kaufman.
They also have this huge immigrant population already, and a lot of organizations are already mobilized to support folks in this situation. That's the interesting dichotomy to it.
I agree. And then the other side, they don't spend public funds supporting undocumented immigrants the way Denver does. These newcomers that we've supported so much in Denver. Do you all think that this wave of national scrutiny that Aurora is now like having this backlash of like, wait, maybe this isn't such a big problem? Do you think this is going to change anything in the local politics?
Boy, that's a really great question, and it's really hard to predict. I mean, look, Aurora went Republican before all this. I mean, I guess amid all of this happening. So and we are a state. We're going to talk about the history of our state. We are a state that has had that Tom Tancredo lineage of politics, a kind of, a lot of people who are listening to this who may be younger don't remember that, but a real anti-immigrant politics that was here in this state. So I think this is a volatile electoral issue. But that said, it is a blue state. Mm-hmm. It is a democratic state. And there is no evidence that this state's politics are going to overnight become MAGA politics. But it's also to say that there are pockets of that, even here on the Front Range.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. For the record, there have been some new polls out this week on the Trump-Harris race in Colorado, and Harris is up. I mean, no surprise. But Biden, when he was the candidate, was only beating by Trump by 2% in one poll back when it was getting really dicey for him. Harris is now up by like 11% according to this poll from Keating Research, which is a lot. But I was looking back at a precedent for this at our last gubernatorial election, Polis versus Ganal. Polis beat Ganal by 24 percentage points, which is like double the margin that Harris is up on Trump. So I think there is something happening here.
I'm just always trying to relate this to the everyday experience of someone in Aurora. Like, is this really impacting their lives? Someone who is housed, who has lived there, for 10 years or 20. Like, is this really impacting them, or are they going to be motivated by fear?
Well, I think it those two things can overlap. I do think that the perception of crime impacts your perception of how safe you feel.
Sure.
And so there's like kind of a psychological Vulcan mind trick going on here, right? Where, for instance, this has happened across the country where people's perception that violent crime is skyrocketing. Meanwhile, violent crime continues to go down nationally and in cities across the country. But the perception can change the voting patterns and can change how you feel in your neighborhood, right? And so what I worry about is if the police are saying, listen, yes, we have like normal problems with crime, like within the mean, like normal problems with crime, that sprinkling in, it's a foreign terrorist organization, a foreign gang, a transnational scary gang, that it changes the politics of how people vote based on perceptions that aren't necessarily real, and also it can change the sort of psychological character of a community. If everyone more and more people walking around being afraid, right? And to be honest, that's how violent crime can go up. If everyone's walking around being afraid in a country that's got a lot of guns, that's one way that sort of crime can go up.
Yeah. I mean, I just have thought about my own personal experience in my neighborhood and like what changed when we saw the influx. I just saw more folks on the street washing windows asking for money, but that was literally the only difference. I didn't see a change in businesses that have been there. The housing prices nothing changed to me. And my neighborhood conversations didn't really change. And so that's why I wonder what it really means for Aurora residents.
I did hear Trump say something that was, he's always like intersperses, like once in a while he'll say something vaguely interesting and almost like accidentally correct. And he did say, he was like, look, states and societies have been built up over decades and hundreds of years. And, a whole new quick influx of people can change that. Like, there is a truth to that a society, a quote unquote culture does build up over decades and really centuries, and that a whole new population can somewhat change that culture.
100%.
And that can be terrifying to people who are there. Now, I'm not making a xenophobic argument, right? I'm not saying that, but I'm just saying like that fear of change is real.
And my neighborhood, also a great example of this. I live next door to the Polish club. There is nary a Polish person on my block other than my husband's last name. There's a Polish event there once a month. The rest of the time, it's mostly Spanish-speaking folks having quinceañeras, weddings, and birthday parties. That change has happened over decades, right?
Mm-hmm.
And the neighborhood maybe was more predominantly Polish at some point, but now it is more predominantly Spanish-speaking. But this happens in neighborhoods in America everywhere. And look, New York City is a great example of that. So
yes,
to me, it's just part of the evolution of cities.
The fear of change, especially, if we're being honest, among older people who are used to their communities, not, there was the old Wayne's World joke, right? We fear change, right? There's a baked in fear. And the question is, I go back to the maturity, are we a mature enough society to sort of realize, okay, change can be scary, but we're being Vulcan mind tricked into feeling it be a threat.
Yeah. To his benefit.
Exactly.
To his benefit.
Oh, for sure.
One more thing here on the local impact, how it's actually affecting the people of Aurora. I wanted to share this because I thought this was such an interesting Instagram post from Caroline Glover, the chef behind the wonderful restaurant Annette, which just by sheer accident of the local economy ended up in this Stanley Marketplace, which is just on the other side of the border in Aurora. And so therefore she didn't have a chance to win a Michelin star, which everyone says she probably would have in the last couple years that the Michelin Guide has come here. But she put up this post and she said a lot about what's happening. But this one quote was just I have to share this. She wrote, "Our city leaders are doing too little to defend Aurora on the national stage and to call out these racist anti-immigrant dog whistles for what they are. Some at the top in our city are even feeding the flames of falsehood and hate for political gain. This does nothing but harm our reputation and our economy. This city deserves better leadership. Let's be proud of where we live and work to make it better."
Yeah.
What did you all think of this from Caroline Glover?
I'm really glad somebody said that. I think it's pathetic for local politicians to try to use their own community as a way to platform themselves.
They're throwing their own people under the
nationally.
bus.
Yeah, it's really gross, right? Look, again, there are real problems in Aurora, like there are real problems in Denver, but the exploitation of your own constituency, your own city, to try to gain a national platform in conservative media, in any media.
And make your city look terrible.
Right, it's just,
why would you want to do that? That's the weird part to me.
Bad.
About Councilwoman Jurinski's comments and consistent push of this rhetoric is, what are you doing? You're making people think the place that you're supposed to represent sucks.
Exactly.
Yeah, it's whose fault is that?
And then we have a restaurateur coming out and saying, it doesn't suck here. Why are you doing this to us?
Right, because here's the thing, if you're a restaurateur, I presume you want people to be, for instance, going out at night.
Absolutely.
You want people to be
feel safe in your community.
Right. So when your local politician is running out on Fox News and being like, "Oh my God, this is not safe," that's bad for your business.
And it's bad for the economy of the city you're representing. So it is, I liked her point and I appreciated that because it takes a lot to stick your neck out a little bit as a business owner.
Absolutely.
Yeah, you don't want to wade into politics if you're running a business. It's the last thing you want to do. There's so much more to talk about with this. There was a great quote from Governor Polis. I'm going to have to put a link to it in the show notes, but he was very funny. Kamala should come. That's the real answer here. Kamala, come, go to the apartments. She wants to talk about housing. Go to the apartments, prove him wrong, talk about housing. I know you don't need to because you got Colorado locked up, but you should come. We got to take a break. We're going to come back and talk about David's excellent new podcast.
If the president comes, I hope he doesn't bring with him an element of lawlessness or people that are causing trouble. Obviously, we welcome anybody to the city of Aurora, to Colorado, but obviously we worry about some of the criminal element that he brings with him.
This episode is brought to you by Be Civic. Be Civic is an affiliate of the Denver Metro Chamber Leadership Foundation. Together, they are a force of business and community leaders who are passionate about building strong communities and running smart, successful organizations. Be Civic gives organizations of all industries, structures, and sizes the connections, resources, and inspiration they need to be civic-minded while meeting business goals. This year, the nonprofit celebrates its 10th anniversary at the Be Civic Summit, A Decade of Purpose. The conference brings together hundreds of purpose-driven professionals to advance social impact in our communities. Check out the Decade of Purpose Summit on November 13th and 14th in downtown Denver. To learn more about Be Civic and the conference, visit becivic.org. That's just the letter B, civic.org. This episode is brought to you by the Logan School. Hey, Olivia, when I was a kid, I was curious about neotropical parrots and how radios worked. Did you ever feel that way?
Definitely. I was curious about so many different things, like how language was created, why hermit crabs molt, even collecting retail tags to learn about patterns and design.
Totally. At the Logan School, curiosity isn't just a question, it's the answer. Here, kids explore their own passions and choose what and how they learn.
So, like no textbooks or boredom?
Exactly. At Logan, learning is an adventure and kids come home buzzing with stories. They dive deep into subjects that excite them.
Sounds awesome.
It is. At Logan, they nurture creative minds and let them lead the way. If you're looking for a school that inspires, they have tours Wednesdays at 9:30 a.m., October through December. You can visit theloganschool.org to RSVP and learn more. That's theloganschool.org.
All right, we're back. Our hot topic this week is David's awesome new podcast, Master Plan, which reveals previously unknown Colorado connections with Project 2025, the ultra-conservative playbook for a second Trump administration. David, what is this podcast? Tell us about Master Plan.
So Master Plan is about the secret plot to legalize corruption in America. And what that means is the politics of money that we live in, where we all kind of, I think, inherently believe and know that money is typically determinative of political outcomes. That system that we're immersed in is not natural. It's not inevitable. It was created through a series of specific decisions, specific policy choices pushed by specific people. So when people, I think a lot of people think about corruption, political corruption, maybe they think of Citizens United, which they should, because Citizens United was sort of the capping off of the crescendo of this 50-year plan. And this 50-year plan to legalize corruption, to say that money in politics isn't corruption, it's constitutionally protected speech, and to say that corporations have a right to that constitutionally protected speech in elections, all of that was created by this master plan, which started back in the early 1970s with a lot of big Colorado connections. So our podcast, Master Plan, tells this story of how this happened.
I want to know why you wanted to dig into Project 2025 in particular, though, because I have to say, after that came out, it was in the news for a week or so, and then sort of folks moved on. Why was that something that you were like, there's more?
Because Project 2025 is a very explicit, detailed, right out in our face agenda of what the conservative movement wants to do. I will give them credit for one thing. They are making very clear what they want to do. It's actually kind of an interesting contrast. You can criticize Kamala Harris for being wildly, deliberately, annoyingly vague about what she wants to do. And then on the other side, you have Project 2025, which is like, here's a 900-page document of everything we want to do and we're probably going to do. So Project 20, and now I know Trump has distanced himself from it, which is a lot of nonsense. I mean, there were a ton of Trump staffers who were involved in creating this, and more importantly, the Heritage Foundation, which is the sponsor of Project 2025, has had a great deal of success implementing their versions of Project 2025 for the last 40 years. Project 2025 is actually the 9th iteration of their so-called Mandate for Leadership series. They existed, their first big project that they did when they were formed in the 70s was to create basically plug and play agendas for presidents. One example, they got a lot of press. Obviously, it was like their big moment when Ronald Reagan took their first Project 2025, although it should have been called Project 1981. They took their first Mandate for Leadership series and implemented about 60% of what they wanted. So that's a reminder that when we talk about Project 2025, there's a very good chance that if Donald Trump wins, a lot of it will be put into place.
Let's talk about the local connections, because that's what I'm really interested in. So it's all about the Coors family and this guy Joseph Coors, who ran this company for a long time. One of the many rich old white guys who ran the Coors dynasty. It's, everyone knows Coors, old beer company. It's not based here anymore. Based in Chicago. It's part of a big conglomerate. But Joseph Coors had a big part to play in this master plan. Can you explain that?
Sure. So one of the big documents that we uncover and look at in master plan is called the Powell Memorandum. And so in 1971, Lewis Powell was the head of the American Bar Association and a tobacco industry lawyer on his way to becoming a Supreme Court justice. He writes a memo to the Chamber of Commerce in response and reaction to Ralph Nader. Ralph Nader at the time was this huge celebrity who was winning all these battles. I mean, this is the era when Medicare, Medicaid, the EPA was created, civil rights laws, voting rights laws. The government declared a war on poverty. Ralph Nader is a celebrity.
Was he the seatbelt guy?
Yes, exactly.
Yeah, he's the reason we had seatbelts.
Yes. So if you're sitting there and you're like Lewis Powell, pinnacle of the establishment, you're like, this guy, Ralph Nader, is you're being traumatized. Like the government is doing all this study. Your companies can't dump the chemical in the river anymore. And like you have to, you're in the tobacco industry. You got to deal with people saying smoking causes cancer. Like you're freaked out. So he writes this memo to the Chamber of Commerce being like, listen, business is under attack. In fact, he says the businessman is the forgotten man. And here are all the things that we have to do to make the government more responsive to the businessman, the allegedly persecuted, sad businessman. I mean, it sounds ridiculous, but this is really what happened. So he writes this memo, and we uncovered audio of Joseph Coors saying in an interview in 1996 that the Powell memo is what stirred him to get off the sidelines and start seriously investing in the conservative political infrastructure that became very quickly a very big and powerful force in American politics. And to bring it back to Project 2025, Joseph Coors, probably the most famous political investment that he made was in the creation of the Heritage Foundation. He was one of the major seed funders of the Heritage Foundation, which in all of the organizing that came from the Powell memo, legal organizing, political advocacy, media, et cetera, the Heritage Foundation found its role in the policy. We are going to be the policy engine for this movement. So very soon after Joseph Coors starts making his investments comes what I like to call Project 1981.
That's so interesting, though. It seems like, because we know the Coors history. We talk about the Coors history, and I know there was the boycotts.
The boycotts. That's what I relate the family to, is the anti-gay stuff.
And I think that was the 50s and 60s, right?
60s and 70s.
So he must have been dealing with this and then like feeling this resentment about his business, and then he had this memo that was like, oh. Well, I could be doing something in politics.
And the amazing thing is that this audio that we uncovered, It was from a 1996 interview. He gave an interview to a guy writing a history of the Heritage Foundation. And what's really interesting about this interview is there's been some debate. Was the Powell memo just some Reddit thread from some random guy? It didn't mean anything. It was just some guy's, rant. Joseph Coors in the interview in 1996 brings it up himself. He is not asked about it by the historian. He says something to the effect of, have you ever read the Powell memo? Let me tell you about it. Let me tell you how I got involved in political investing. Right?
Interesting.
So the point is like, this is one example of how the Powell memo catalyzed this larger movement.
Interesting turning point in history that you all uncovered.
Yes.
It was some serious archival research. I've listened to the series. I've been really enjoying it. And
Thank you.
You sent Jared Jacang Mayer all the way to Virginia to this college campus, really painted a picture. It's been a real ride. I recommend people listen.
I went with Jared. The next episode that's coming out, we went to Terre Haute, Indiana. Now, you may be wondering, why would you go to Terre Haute, Indiana? What's there? Well, we got an interview with the lawyer who architected the Citizens United case.
Oh, wow.
So
that's going to be great.
Time with him to discuss like how he got involved and what he wants to do. And it was fascinating.
That is fascinating. I'll look forward to that. But forget Terre Haute. Forget Virginia. We're talking about Colorado and the Coors name. That means something here.
Yeah.
Bree, what does it mean to you right now?
What does Coors mean?
Yeah, Coors, the brand, the name.
I mean, I don't know. To me, they were bought out so long ago that it's not a brand I associate with Denver. Also, we were talking about this earlier, Paul. You think about the beers that were popular maybe when you first turned 21. I was in the era of the hipster Pabst everything. You didn't drink Coors unless it was the only thing they had. So it's just like not a brand that really resonates to me. And I wonder how many people really even
associate it with.
Yeah, I kind of wonder that.
Yeah,
people associate him with Colorado.
I remember in the 80s watching sports. I grew up in Philly, but there was always some tagline about the water, like the Rocky Mountain water.
Taste the high
country. Yeah, it was like all that. I will say, additionally, as it relates to Colorado, it is interesting to think about how many pivotal icons, political icons there were in Colorado in the conservative movement. I mean, I think it's easy to not remember that or not even know that because of what the state is now. But back in the Dynasty era, right? Remember, Dynasty, right, was, there was this was kind of a beating heart of the conservative movement. I think about the Gorsuches, not just Neil Gorsuch, but his mother at the EPA. I think of Gail Norton. Gail Norton comes out of the Mountain States Legal Foundation, or at least that legal world. I think of Bill Armstrong, the senator. I think of James Dobson's group down in Colorado Springs.
Focus on the Family.
Yeah. It's easy.
It wasn't that long ago. I think that's a great point.
It's not that long ago. Yeah. And it really I said to
we were the hate state. It was not.
Yeah. And I said to a friend recently, I was like, look, there are these places that were the beating heart of the 1970s, 1980s into the 1990s conservative movement that had kind of a disproportionate impact on the conservative movement. Colorado was one of them. Another place you might think about, which has also flipped, is like Orange County, California, home of Ronald Reagan. So many Reaganites came out of this place. That place is now, it's bluish, purplish, right? We're a blue state. It's just amazing to think about how much of a deep connection Colorado has, frankly, in my view, unfortunately, to a conservative movement that has really taken over a lot of the government.
Well, taken over a lot of the government, but it's kind of old school. It's not the conservative movement that's in power now.
No.
Like we talked about earlier, it's not Trump's conservative movement. Like Lauren Boebert, I don't think he's just going to feel much of a connection to like Joseph Coors and the Powell memo, She's not part of this big master plan. She's part of a whole different tradition.
I think that's right. The modern conservative movement is different. And I do think you could make an argument that Project 2025 is trying to essentially, is sort of the old conservative movement trying to keep its policy agenda in the MAGA movement. Like there is some, I wouldn't call it friction because again, so many of Trump's former people wrote Project 2025, but I definitely think you're right. There is a kind of old school conservative, I'm putting this in quotes, free market conservatism that was what Joe Coors is talking about. And the MAGA movement is something a little bit different.
Well, for me, I think the Coors brand is a very hot brand in fashion right now. I mean, you go down to Rhino on a Friday night, you're going to see people wearing Coors t-shirts. I feel like I see it all the time.
Really?
Oh my God.
I mean, but
yes.
you know what? To me, it's like almost inane though. It's like, I mean, I bought a Nirvana shirt at Target. It's like that kind of, it is, I bought a Nirvana shirt for the tour that my parents wouldn't let me go see in 1993. I tried to go. They were at McNichols Arena, but you can buy it at Target. And it's the same kind of thing to me as you might not even think twice about a Coors shirt. It's like the design's cool, the shirt fits nice, and it looks retro.
I will cop to not actually knowing that there when I first moved to Denver in Colorado, to not actually knowing there was anything other than Coors Light. Like I didn't know there was Coors Banquet.
Interesting.
Like I actually didn't know that, which I don't know what that says about how they branded themselves. Because Coors Light is like not cool at all, and it's not.
It's not even a cool garbage beer.
Right.
Like, you know what I mean?
Like
it's not a high life.
The icon, the logo, the font. It's like really not cool, and like the beer, isn't really very good.
Maybe someday it'll be cool again. Have you ever been to the Coors plant, like taking the tour out in Golden?
I have not.
I'd recommend it. It's full. I mean, it's 100% propaganda for the company, obviously, but it's interesting the story that they choose to tell about themselves.
Yeah.
I bet it doesn't include any of this about Joseph Coors.
No, I
don't think you're going to get a plug for the podcast.
I don't think there's like a Powell memo room. Like,
sounds like if Joseph Coors had his way, you might have liked that.
Exactly.
That would be an interesting museum.
Exactly.
If you made a museum, I'd like to see David Sirota's Coors Museum.
There you go. Yes.
There's so many fascinating connections in this podcast like this, David.
That's the stuff. I realize, and I said to my wife recently, I realize I sound like Donald Sutherland on the park bench in JFK, right? Where it's like, it's all a conspiracy, right? I know I sound like that, but like everything in our podcast is documented. And for folks who are listening to this, come for the history lesson, stay for Lewis Black reading the Powell memo. We needed another famous Lewis, so we managed to get Lewis Black, thanks to my friend, Brett Saunders.
Great choice.
Who hooked me up.
Oh, Brett.
Shout out to Brett. It is a great podcast. It's very fun. It's not dry at all. It's not like that kind of history.
No.
It's very light. It's a nice tone. Highly recommend it. Listeners, I want to know what you think about Coors in 2024. What is a Coors brand do you mean? Is it fashion or is it, put it in the trash heap of history? Call in 720-500-5418. What do you think about Coors? 720-500-5418. We're going to go with one more break and come back and do wins and fails of the week.
This episode is brought to you by Pine Melon, because I want you to have the peace of mind that comes with knowing where your food actually comes from and the sense of satisfaction you'll get from supporting the local Colorado community. It's a grocery delivery service that works with local farmers, ranchers, and artisans, and it's super easy to use and super fast, like same-day delivery fast. When our newsletter editor Peyton Garcia needed Bruna's Brazilian cheese bread in a pinch, she made an order with Pine Melon and it was delivered right to her door. Her neighborhood game night snack tray was complete. If you need a specialty food item on the fly or just want to make sure you're able to get Colorado's local produce delivered right to your door for dinner, Pine Melon has got you covered. Plus, if you go to pinemelon.com today and use promo code CityCastDenver, you get $75 off your first delivery. Again, go to pinemelon.com and use promo code CityCastDenver and get $75 off your first order today.
All right, we're back. Best way to end the week, wins and fails, aka Rocky Mountain highs and lows of the week. We each brought a recent local something that we think is a win and another we think is a fail, and we're going to talk about it. And we're going to start with Bree.
Well, Westward reported that the Denver Police Department will be cracking down on expired license plates this week along Interstates I-25 and 70. I was not on the show when you guys talked about the expired plates thing. I find this to be such a weird obsession for people. It's definitely a segment of Instagram and a couple Denver subreddits where just people are just reveling in taking photographs of people's expired tags and are just like, I can't believe that someone else didn't pay for their license plates. Like, it's the weirdest thing to me. And I think it's a fail to me because can we be this passionate about road safety or speeding? Why are we putting cops towards this thing, a low-level offense, which they have talked about is often a way to disproportionately pull over Black and brown folks? What are we doing? And just like if you care about this that much, could you just care a little bit about traffic related crashes and real problems on the road? That's my problem.
So you want to fail?
Yeah.
Boy, I think I didn't prepare enough. The fail that I've been thinking about a lot, and this isn't like this week. I'm just gonna throw it out there. It's like recently, last few weeks. The whole property tax special session.
Yeah, let's talk about it.
Feels like just an epic failure of democracy in this way, right? Like, okay, like there's a property tax dispute, or people are upset. Some people are very small. Like, I mean, not very small people. Not very small people. Not a very small segment of the population. I realize there is a grievance about cost of living and property taxes going up. But the fact that they held a special session, because there were a bunch of a small handful of very wealthy, anonymous, and that's the other crazy part, anonymous wealthy people who were threatening to run a ballot measure that could have destroyed the finances of the state. And so the choice was call a special session or potentially will blow up the entire state. And the legislators are negotiating theoretically with like men behind the curtain. They don't even know who they're negotiating with. Just the entire display feels like a failure of democracy.
Yeah, I don't see a special session being called to support renters.
That's exactly.
I was like, we've had a crisis around folks that are paying too much in rent, and we have never
called a special session.
No,
and
that's how I felt about it, too.
I want to be clear. I'm not saying there isn't pain out there among homeowners who are living on a fixed income.
Sure, but that's a very small. That's not who's being represented.
That's not who got the special session called, right? Like it was presumably some giant landowner who I have my theories of who it is, right? And like now we have our elected officials negotiating with like, they don't even know who they're negotiating with.
Well, I think they do, actually. I don't think it's that anonymous. I mean, maybe the funders of these organizations are, but the people who have pushed these ballot measures and then eventually pulled them after the special session, it was Michael Fields of Advanced Colorado,
right, but who does
and
he
Colorado
represent?
Concern. That's what you're saying.
Like,
yeah.
He's in front of the curtain. It's like who's behind, like we don't even know who he's speaking for, right?
Yeah.
Like, do we really want a society in which a handful of anonymous billionaires can just like call the legislature into session because they like want a tax cut? I mean, that's really bad.
That's what happened.
That's exactly. That's literally
just
what happened.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, and they let it happen. The rest of the legislators, I guess.
But the thing is that I can also see the other side of the argument, which is if those very wealthy people are threatening to put a ballot measure on the ballot that seems super simple, that could like blow up the entire finances of the state, like it's a bad choice.
You got to try to stop it.
Yeah,
they had a good strategy.
Yeah, I mean,
the proponents of these cuts,
it did work. And what I worry about, I'm sorry to go off one more moment here. The citizens ballot measure, I'm putting that in quotes. I'm like wildly air quoting here.
Okay,
like,
you're going to take shots of the ballot measure process. I like this
because it's like a misnomer, right? Why is it a misnomer? Oh, citizens, it gives people more access to democracy. It costs millions of dollars to get on the ballot. Like it costs a lot of money to get enough signatures to get on the ballot. So it has the patina of a citizens ballot process, but because it costs so much even to get on the ballot, it is a millionaires and billionaires game. So now we see the special session is an example of how the millionaires and billionaires anonymously can use the ballot measure process that I can't use. I don't presume you guys can just walk out there and get a zillion signatures, right? They can use the ballot measure process to get basically a gun to the head of the legislature to get them to come in to try to stop it by giving them a tax cut.
I'm going to have to disagree with you about this, David. I think all of these games are controlled by millionaires and billionaires. Of course, they have more influence, but we would have a much less democratic system without this process. And yes, it's easier with a lot of money. It's not impossible without money. And we do see it happen.
You think you'd have a less democratic process without the ballot measures?
Yes.
The ballot measures being the way they
I think
are.
I think
where
it's
the only
possible.
people who can get on the ballot are the millionaires and billionaires.
I don't think they're the only people. I think if you and I wanted to go out there,
give me one example.
I can't think of one.
I mean, I worked for a mayoral campaign that we raised a couple $1,000s and we ended up getting 5,000 votes. So it was possible, but
I'm not against all ballot measures. I'm against the way the ballot measures work in this state, where to get on the ballot, it costs this much money. To actually wage a campaign costs so much money, right?
Paul wants to talk to you about this for a whole podcast.
By the way,
can I
bring it back to one thing you just said because it's important?
Sure.
You just said, you think it's all controlled by millionaires and billionaires anyway?
Yeah.
That's the whole point of master plan.
All right, check out master plan.
There you
check
go.
out master plan for more on the billionaires.
Okay, Paul, your fail.
I have a fail about a rich guy, probably not a billionaire. One of our favorite characters in town, Mayor of Glendale, Mike Donovan.
Oh, jeez.
For the last 8 years, Mr. Donovan has been under investigation for an ethics complaint related to the permitting process for his then girlfriend, now wife, Debbie Donovan's
owner of Shotguns,
effort to open a dispensary next to her strip club, Shotgun Willie's. So the this is so funny. Business Den had this story this week. The Independent Ethics Commission for the state of Colorado, they issued a ruling recently that said he will not be penalized for his actions. They didn't clear him. They said what he did was unethical. His involvement, quote, impinged upon public confidence that decisions regarding permit applications would be made by an impartial, unbiased city council, but they're not punishing him.
Who made this decision?
This Independent Ethics Commission.
In Glendale, what is there, 5 people total that do all these jobs?
I think it's a state body, but just to remind everyone what he did, that they cleared him of.
Oh, yeah.
What he did was he initially recused himself from the vote to permit his then girlfriend's dispensary. But when the vote didn't go his way, it was 3-2, Donovan was in the room and he, quote, angrily stormed up to the dais, took over the meeting, and declared he was going to break the tie, even though the vote was 3-2 against.
Okay, so here's what I want. Here's what I want from the Denver City Cast. I want the 7-part series.
Oh, we've talked about
Glendale.
Yeah. Just the history
have talked about this, David.
It is such a
weird little island in the middle.
It's right down near where we live.
Yeah, it's right where I grew up.
My wife has represented pieces of it. It's just so. By the way, it's hard to explain to anybody who doesn't live here. You're like, oh, is that Denver? No, it's Glendale. Well, what's Glendale? You're like, it's sort of this.
It's where the strip club and the Target is.
Yeah. Well, how many people live? Well, now it's like a city.
3 single-family homes. We don't know.
Yes, it's such that's your project.
I love it. I accept the assignment. Have you seen the new development going up behind the Target, by the way? It's going to be like restaurants.
Yes.
I'm so excited about it.
I'm super excited
I
about
am too. That's been in no man's land for a long time.
Yeah, but it's going to take 2 years.
Yeah, 2 years. Yeah. But then Alamo Drafthouse.
Is that what's coming there?
They say the Glendale people say it's coming. They have posters on the fence that have the Alamo branding. Alamo refuses to respond to my emails.
Yeah, I was like, do we trust
I don't
Glendale?
know. I don't know if I can fully confirm it.
Let me put in a plug for Southeast Denver generally. I believe Southeast Denver is one of it for the amount of people who live there. It is one of the least well-served places in the city for restaurants and stuff like the Alamo Draft House.
I grew up there.
It's like there's a lot of people there, and it's like there are some good restaurants. And
listen, when I was a kid, we didn't have Esther's. I had to go to a bar there as a child called Easy Pickins. So things have gotten better.
I know, and the thing with Esther's down there is, I say it's no disrespect to Paul. I mean, they've done a great job, but it's like part of their business model is them being the only one around there.
This is exactly how I feel about it.
It's so weird.
Yeah.
But it's not their fault.
No, it's a good business move by them. But I'm like, where are the others?
There isn't anything else.
Well, and what's really sad,
coming soon.
You know what's really sad? Have you gone over to Junction? You know Junction? Right near the movie theater on Colorado.
Oh yeah, where the Dave and Buster's is.
Where the Dave and Buster's. They had a big bustling food. It's like. It's bleak.
It's no man's land.
That section is bad too.
It didn't work. I think the reason it didn't work, it hasn't worked, is because people don't live right. It's right in an industrial complex.
It's a highway interchange.
Yeah.
Okay. Let's move on to wins. Wins of the week. Good stuff. I'll go first. I got a fast one. City Council this week approved the rezoning for Cherry Creek West, which is the long gestating giant project just to the west of the Cherry Creek Mall. We had this big project last year on the show, Cherry Creek Week. We'll put some links in the show notes so you can learn all about what they're planning there. But, I just think this is a big plus up. We've had this Elways that was there, and there was this, there's Spirit Halloween effectively. It was in the old Bed Bath & Beyond that sort of fell apart. And I think they're going to build housing. They're going to do improvements to the Cherry Creek Trail.
I don't know. People who love parking lots are going to be real bummed about this, Paul.
I think they are. I think they have parking people. Big parking fans are going to be sad. But the rest of us, it seems like it's going to be good for the city. I think it's good news.
I'm always a wait and see guy on this. We'll see how it goes.
For sure. They could mess it up. The economy changes. Anything, it could fall apart. But Bree, what's your win?
La Fiesta celebrates 60 years today. It's the oldest family-owned Mexican restaurant here in Denver, started by Michael Herrera, who also owned Colorado's first Spanish language radio station. And that's my familial connection to it is my grandma, Joanne, was Michael's accountant for the radio station.
Oh.
And I actually didn't know this. I grew up going there, but didn't realize it. And then almost a decade ago. Well, I boxed at 20th. I was a boxer at 20th Street Gym for 10 years, and I boxed there with Robert Herrera, his grandson, and we got to talking, and he said, my family owns La Fiesta. And I told, I was talking to my mom about it, and she's like, oh yeah, we used to go there all the time because your grandma was their accountant. So my wedding reception was the first event they did in 20 years on a Saturday night at La Fiesta. And so it's just a really special place to me. And they're doing like a big event today starting at 2:00. You can come down. I'm going to be reading some proclamations. And we're just going to be celebrating a business that's been in Denver for 60 years and serves our famous Colorado Mexican food.
That's today, Friday, September 27th.
Yes.
Come on down, get some chili rellenos wrapped in egg roll.
The only way they should be. Mm-hmm.
I do love that restaurant. You ever be there? You ever go there, David?
I've never gone there.
Oh, you got to check it out.
The atmosphere, perfect.
It's one of a kind.
Where is
beautiful. It's on like Champa and 24th-ish.
Oh, cool.
Park Ave-ish.
All right, David, what's your win of the week?
I hate to be redundant, but the Nuggets news is like buoying me this morning.
It is very exciting.
I'm going to get to I think it was yesterday or the day before, I was talking to Emily, my wife, and I was like, what are we going to do with this? I'm addicted to the Nuggets. Fubo is too expensive.
Now it's $20.
Now it's $20 a month, which is like not nothing, but
I'm going to be able to $80.
Yes, compared to $80, I'm going to be able to watch the Nuggets. Although, again, whole topic for a separate episode is I'm very worried about the Nuggets. I'm very worried about Jamal Murray. I'm like Russell Westbrook is kind of a wild card. I know Jokic has knows what he's doing, but and I should mention one other thing I'm worried about real quick. Michael Malone said something that made me a little nervous this morning.
Coach, what did he say?
Coach said they need to be taking more threes, and they were not. Russell Westbrook is, I think, the worst 3-point shooter. No, I think statistically one of the worst 3-point shooters in NBA history. So I'm a little, and Christian Braun from 3, he's not KCP.
No.
We haven't. KCP. So my point is, we haven't added any 3-point skill as far as I can tell. But the coach is saying we need to take more threes. It's like.
Everybody can't be Golden State. We got to have a different
I'm not
approach.
showing less faith in Coach. My faith is with him, but bro,
I'll tell you what I got faith in with the Nuggets right now is that new facial hair Jokic is rocking.
Oh, yeah, I saw that.
Oh, boy. Yeah. He looks great.
Yeah, he does.
He looks great.
Yeah.
That's his, I'm regretfully telling you I have to come back to work face.
Yes.
I will come back and be awesome, and then I will go back home to Serbia.
Yeah.
Well, here we are at the end of the show. Listeners, go subscribe to Master Plan. Do yourself a favor. You'll learn something. It's really fun. David, you did a great job with the pod.
Thank you. Thank you so much.
Big ups to the whole team. And thanks for joining us.
Thank you. Thanks for having me.
Thanks, guys.
That's all for today here on CityCast Denver. Our producers this week were Lizzie Goldsmith, Selena C.A. Reynolds, Olivia Jewel Love, and me, Paul Caroli. Peyton Garcia writes our morning newsletter, Hey Denver. Bree Davies is our host. Our music is by Los Mocochetes, with additional mixing by Tyler Lindgren. If you haven't already, subscribe to the show wherever you get your podcasts. Follow us on Instagram at CityCast Denver, and tell Glendale Mayor Mike Donovan about us next time you see him. You can sign up for that daily newsletter and learn more about us at denver.citycast.fm. See you next week.
high country.
It is a relentless land, people with relentless men.
Taste the high country.
They are us, and we are them.
Taste Coors.